There's a reason why I have escalated my career into politics and found myself as party leader. And here's why, drum roll. I believe in Christian nationalism. My campaign is to reclaim Christendom in Britain. At some point, things got so good for us here in Britain that at some point, man turned his head away from God, away from religion, away from Holy Mother Church, and towards himself. Because as conservatives, personal responsibility is our 101. So I'm pointing the finger at myself. I'm pointing the finger at my dad. I'm pointing the finger at my family, everyone else as well. We must first look in the mirror and realize that we got it so very wrong. Illegal immigration is paid for by us, the taxpayer in Britain, and it's £2 billion a year. In Britain, we've got more CCTV per square mile than any country on planet Earth. That's a well-known fact. And you can't get away with anything in Britain. How is it possible that these people are coming to Britain? It's all facilitated. It's state-sponsored terrorism. Now, that can get you into a lot of trouble saying that in Britain, but this is satanic. You say, why? Why is this happening? I think that it's satanic. There you go. I said it. It's the number one threat to Britain in 2026, same as last year and the year before. It's that unholy alliance between communists and Islamists, because the war we're in, Justin, is an unholy war. It is a crusade. The battle we are in is for Britain's soul. And so in Britain, the vast majority of people who could hold power and who care so very much about this country aren't even registered to vote.
Hi, everybody. This is Justin, your host here at Reclaiming Christendom. And today I'm honored to be with Nick Tenconi. Nick, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks be to God, Justin. Peace be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Of course, we are very excited to hear about you today. But first, Nick, we'd like to know for our audience a little bit about you, who you are and what you do.
Certainly. So I'm based in Britain, as you can probably tell from my accent. I am the
Not a
chief
New York accent, Nick?
Yeah, there's a slight New York twang there. So I'm British. I was born here. My mother's side is Irish, and my father's side is Italian. And like a lot of Irish and Italians, they settled in Britain. So in terms of the grandparents that did that, I'm guessing somewhere around 1910 ish. So the journey for me has been after I was raised in the 80s and the 90s, and that meant being involved in an awful lot of conversations if you had that particular proclivity with regards to Soviet Russia, Margaret Thatcher, and Reagan, and the nuclear arms race. And I happen to be incredibly interested in politics as well. So I was badgering my father when I was a kid. He was bless him, a very tolerant and patient man. You'd have to be with me there just with the questions. It was fascinating to me. And it extended beyond that as well, Justin. Why does a pint of milk cost a pint of milk? Why 6 eggs cost 6 eggs? And you can see where I'm going with this. So I was always fascinated by politics, but also theory, which I would later go on to then study international relations theory, but also philosophy. I was fascinated with regards to why things and how things work. If it had my interest, of course. If it didn't, then I wouldn't care. So I was really lucky. My brother and I were really lucky. We had a great upbringing, schooling, whatever, and then the natural path, early noughties, give or take. I've got one older brother, would be to go to university. So that's my story. And if you're my kind of guy in Britain, come from my sort of family, you would go to university by definition. So that was when I basically started university, when Tony Blair, around about 2002, 2003, Tony Blair, little did we know, started doing some really naughty things whilst he was in power, which by putting those things into progress, into work, you then reap the benefits or consequences of that years down the line. That's just the way that it works when you enact laws and things like that. So at university, parallel, I was just after 9/11, just after Twin Towers. I was lucky enough that I had one of the professors was an ex-advisor. He was closely tied in to the guys at the White House and political philosophers, I guess, like John Mearsheimer. These are some pretty big names, and this is what I was studying at that time. Well over 20 years ago now. That's what I was studying, and I became obsessed with international relations theory, political theory. Politics, not so much. Politics is very easy to understand, and it's a people business, right? So, but theory, when I was studying, this meant an awful lot to me. And the dominant theories of international relations was realism, and you had these other theories like liberalism, radicalism, Marxism. So that was my education and my pedigree. It's from a red brick university, and my dissertation was on Third World Thermonuclear War. And for those people that have done an undergrad dissertation, it's 10,000 words. It's just not obviously a huge, great big task, but really enjoyed it, did really well at it. And then I went into the business world. And 2019, 2020, there was a lot that went on. You know, in Britain, no different from other parts of the world, where people's bills kept coming, but they couldn't earn a salary anymore. People took their own lives, you know, and this still goes on now in the Houses of Commons in Britain. People talk, MPs talking about it, and you know, people want justice, and they want to see the right people punished for certain things that happen at that time. I took a different approach. Again, as a realist, I said, right, okay, fine, this has happened, but I'm now going to get involved in politics. So obviously, good always comes out of bad, and suffering is grace. So I decided I was going to get involved in politics, and that all happened when we came out of lockdown in, I don't know when America came out, but we came out in April 2021, if memory serves. So that was the moment where I said, right, I need to get involved in politics. And lo and behold, throughout the 2020 period, there'd been endless graphics pushed my way by the algorithm on social media of an organization called Turning Point. Now, I didn't know anything about Turning Point, Justin, but by 2020, by August of 2021, Turning Point UK had hired me as its chief operations officer. That's basically what happened, right? So Turning Point UK turns out is a really big deal in the UK, but nothing compared to Turning Point USA in America, and that's for lots of different reasons. But in Britain, Turning Point UK was very, very well known. By August of 2021, I'd built a relationship with our fantastic chief executive officer, a guy called Jack Ross, who you should definitely interview. And I was his second. I became his chief operations officer. So that's the autumn of 2021. And to sort of zip up on the journey, I was pitched by a political party in February of 2024, a political party called UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, which my American brothers and sisters will know was run by a man named Nigel Farage about 10, 11 years ago, and has had many quite high profile leaders since Nigel. And UKIP pitched me to say, look, we want to completely rejuvenate and renew the party, which I was aware of as well, because I knew it wasn't doing a lot, but it had this fantastic social media presence, footprint, size, following, whatever, and brand notoriety. So that I was essentially, I came in as deputy leader, and the leader decided to leave very quickly. I probably shouldn't say those two things together because it sounds like I made them leave. That's not what happened at all. I'm no blame can be placed at my door, but these things happen. She left. She got very ill, and it wasn't for her, and she left. So I became interim leader in the summer of 2024 when we had a general election, and pretty much to the day that I became interim leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party was the same day, July 4th. I'm not sure what the date was in 2024. We had the general election. So I was involved in politics, bearing in mind Nigel Farage's new party of reform was going to do really well for the socially conservative right. That was the forecast. And knowing Nigel as I do and his ideology and his background, I disagreed with that. But this all happened at the same time. And for those who don't know, Nigel and his party called Reform UK returned 5 MPs. Now, in terms of how our system works, that means that Nigel and some of his counterparts got a very good salary. The five that were elected got a very good salary, and loads of money thrown at them, not to mention all sorts of other donations that come their way as well as a result of returning 5 MPs. But unfortunately, that means that we've got a Labour supermajority as well. So to put it in layman's terms, reform didn't do the business. And there was me as interim leader, really just getting started, saying there's a reason why I have escalated my career into politics and found myself as party leader. And here's why, drum roll. I believe in Christian nationalism. I believe that the vast majority of people who identify as social conservatives will be pro-Christianity, regardless of whether they're a Christian or not. And I believe, and I talk about this in my weekly podcast an awful lot, the vast majority of Christians who are actually Christians and who understand the faith, by definition, would be conservative. That's a subscription to the political ideology of conservatism. So that was what happened in 2024. And now here we are, a year and a half later, with me leading the charge with the political organization of UKIP, saying, guys, there is only one solution for Britain. And at the next general election in 2029, we have one final shot to insert enough Christian nationalists and enough Christian nationalism into Parliament to start to rectify wrongs, deliver justice, take our country back. So an awful lot has happened in the last year and a half where every social conservative and right winger technically was behind reform. And in the last year and a half, reform and Nigel have lost favour with the vast majority of social conservatives and Christian nationalists, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is why I'm fighting.
So we know, I just want to bring it out early, that you are having a march on January 31st called Walk with Jesus. That's going to be in Whitechapel in London. And we want to bring that up later. And we want to talk about that march because it's a very interesting march. And I'm sure our listeners want to hear about that. But just in a nutshell, 2026 Britain, what is the situation right now in Britain in 2026?
Yeah, certainly. It's a good question. So across the world, I would argue that reading the room correctly, the vast majority of the West, and indeed the globe, doesn't understand what's happening in Britain at the moment. So I can do that for you, and I can do that for your audience as well, Justin. It's very simple. Since time X, Second World War, the 60s, the hippie the communist revolution, we call it the hippie revolution, it was communism. But really, since the Enlightenment period, so we can go back a few hundred years, or I know you and I are of the Catholic worldview, we can go back to the time of our Lord 2,000 years ago. Nothing's changed. Culture runs downstream from politics. And for some reason, in the West, where we foster the idea of free market economics, going back to that timeline, pick a point, at some point, things got so good for us here in Britain that at some point, man turned his head away from God, away from religion, away from Holy Mother Church, and towards himself. It turned him away from that which is important and that which we should foster and look after and hand down. And it went to cars, money, detached houses with 4 bedrooms. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that there's an ideology called liberalism. And whilst man, our brothers, got rich and did well, regardless of how rich and how well, but generally speaking, things got a lot better in a place like Britain after the Second World War by the time we got to the 60s. And we've got a sexual revolution or second or third wave feminism. And there was a whole concoction which led to this thing called godlessness in the hearts and minds of men, women, husbands, wives, fathers. This is well documented. We know about church attendance, and we know from which churches and from which denominations as well. So that's a broad stroke analysis that basically, as things have gotten better and better and better, we've become more and more complacent, more and more comfortable, more and more greedy, gluttonous, should I say. And I think man has definitely pitted himself against man in a bid to run the rat race and to come out with the biggest slice of cheese. We've forgotten about things like community. We've forgotten about the importance of God's greatest command to love, which we often associate typically with our neighbor, which gets very bastardized because that commandment, as you well know, is to love God and to love ourselves. And obviously that includes our neighbor as well. That's a very important point that gets corrupted and manipulated and bastardized by our enemies in the UK, the communists, an awful lot. So that's what I'd say with regards to the situation in Britain. And you noticed I bring up liberalism and godlessness and degeneracy and materialistic atheism before I talk about Islamism, before I talk about communism, because as conservatives, personal responsibility is our 101. So I'm pointing the finger at myself. I'm pointing the finger at my dad. I'm pointing the finger at my family, everyone else as well. We must first look in the mirror and realize that we got it so very wrong. But culture runs downstream from politics. So where have our politicians been in this? They've been fostering liberalism. They've been fostering abortion. They've been fostering love is love. We're pro-choice. You guys are free to do whatever you want. And we need to take freedom and what we subscribe to as Christians, the mystery of free will. We need to take that idea on steroids, which, to describe where we're at in Britain at the moment, is that there are an awful lot of abortions. Nearly one. It pains me to say this. I think it's one. It's nearly half. Nearly half in Britain. 48 out of 100 births, Justin. And there are stats that I can go into. That's just one subject. We've also got the assisted suicide bill going through Parliament, which is basically going to normalize, legitimize, legalize the euthanasia debate. It's going to be to say, if you go to a doctor, and if this comes to fruition, if this passes vetting and comes out as legislation, you'll be able to go to a doctor, tell them you're depressed. Ultimately, you can be shipped off to a clinic somewhere to take your own life. We've also got the radical trans lobby and an awful lot of sympathy for that lobby with people that hold power in Britain, politicians, a lot of our institutions, for example. So the situation in Britain can be described by understanding that we've turned our backs on God, and now we're reaping what we sowed. But there's also a very left wing, a very dangerous, or what we call far left political presence in our institutions, our schools, our civil service, in our parliament, in our judiciary. We have two-tier policing as well, which is deliberately designed to castrate and cripple patriots wherever, metaphorically speaking, wherever possible. If patriots put a foot out of line versus a paedophile, if patriots put a foot out of line versus a left-wing agitator or a communist or an Islamist for that matter, the patriots it's ensured that you will go to jail, whether that's for 6 months or a year or 2 years. We have the case files, it's demonstrable. Marxists, again, in our institutions, our education system, teaching children from 3 and up about all sorts of sexual material and things that is part of the adult world. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, these kids are being taught that which is degenerate, which is ungodly, which goes completely against church teaching. And then last but not least, having touched on liberalism and communism, we need to talk about Islamism. Islamism is the number one threat that we face in Britain today.
Okay, so what to get to Islamism, we always hear about this uncontrolled, unfettered illegal immigration coming into England. We hear about these boats coming across your channel, and I think a lot of people wonder what's going on, who is behind this, like why now. Obviously, there's this situation in many countries, but particularly in Britain, what a lot of people will ask is it that hard to stop it? I mean, can't you send the Navy out to the channel? So who's behind this unfettered immigration? How would you explain that to people who are scratching their heads?
Yeah, well, they're going to keep scratching their heads. I can do it, but it's not going to make things any easier for your audiences. In fact, it's going to give you a massive headache, Justin. So there's 3 areas now. One is Islamism. That is whether they came here legally or illegally, or whether they were born here. The threat of radical Islam in Britain, which we can talk about. You then have the issue of illegal immigration, which is cultural suicide. Anyone of sound mind and body would argue illegal immigration is cultural suicide. And then you have a third area of what's called legal immigration. Now you will find endless reams, and I want to make this point very clear to your audience. From the statisticians and the analysis and the analyzers of such data, you will find reams of endless stats with regards to legal immigration and illegal immigration. 50,000 have crossed in the boats in the last year. The year before, 35,000 crossed illegally, and then legal immigration. We're importing after everyone's come in, and those people that have left Britain, that some calculations get done, and there's a deficit, and therefore the government is justified in bringing people in. You'll find endless stats. I call it the numbers game, and it's a waste of time. The reality is that living in Britain teaches you that we are surrounded by people who have come here who should not be here, whether they are legal or illegal. Now, to talk about the illegal situation, this is much easier than talking about the problem of legal immigration. Myself, with UKIP and a designated activist team, went to northern France to confront the NGO lefty workers and the migrants themselves and the traffickers. I took a team. I've been out several times. The papers and the reporters don't quite know how many times. They keep getting it wrong. But I've been out several times to northern France with a dedicated team for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, however long the mission takes, to get actual footage of what is going on in terms of the trafficking operation in northern France. Now, yes, patriots had traveled from Britain to Calais to make videos. They'd gone in boats to make videos. All of that's true, but nothing like this had happened before myself and my team spearheaded the campaign in northern France. And I would ask your viewers to check out on my Instagram and my X. I'm sure we can share a little bit about social media handles. Check out our work there.
You are headed towards England, are you not? We are filming you, and this is going to the British government. When you arrive in England, the British government will know who you are. You are not welcome in Britain. Each and every one of you, we have your faces. You work with the traffickers. The NGOs work with the traffickers. I have a question. Where are the women and children? Where are the women and children? In Britain, we are told you're refugees. You do not look like you're refugees. You look like you're economic migrants. Someone tell me where you came from. No one. Where? Where? Where did you come from? They won't talk to me. They won't tell me where they've come from. They're protected by women and NGOs. If they're fleeing war, why are they fleeing their wives? Why are they fleeing their families?
These people are coming from Islamic State via traffickers, via boats, to seek sanctuary from France, which is a safe country, via boats to land on our shores. And then in terms of the legalities, again, lots of detail, none of it's relevant. In terms of legalities, once they set foot or cross into English waters away from France, once they set foot on our shores, the way our political system is rigged up at the moment is they are allowed to be taken, facilitated from the RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institute, from those guys that pick them up as a taxi service, into 3-star, 4-star hotels. They're given a wage, they're given 3 square meals a day. These hotels, no joke, they are 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5-star hotels where the government has done a deal with the hotel chain, the hotel owners. Some of these hotels are independents, and the government have just bought them off. Now, I told you that your audience was going to get a headache. You are, and it's an awful conversation, but it's much easier to talk about than legal immigration. Illegal immigration is paid for by us, the taxpayer in Britain, and it's £2 billion a year. £2 billion a year is spent by us through the authority of the government to bring these people in from the water to the beach, to the buses, to then straight into a 3, 4, 5-star hotel, given an allowance, given 3 square meals a day, and then they have privileges. They're allowed curfew. They're allowed to go outside. They're allowed to be out in Gen Pop, and then they get jobs by the Deliveroo economy and the Just Eat economy and the barbershop economy and the vape store economy. There are various economies in Britain, the fast food takeaway one being an obvious one, another huge one, the car wash economy. So that's the end-to-end true story about illegal, again, 50,000 a year, 30,000 a year. There are an estimated, and this is conservative, Justin, 1.2 million illegal invaders. So before we talk about Islamism and remigration, before we talk about legal migration and how visas and passports have been handed out like candy under liberal British governments for decades, there are approximately 1.2, we all know it's a lot more than that because the government doesn't even know how many are here, maybe up to 5 million illegal immigrants on British soil. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know their criminal record history. We don't know why they're here. And we don't know what intentions they have on our Christian brothers and sisters.
So most of these illegals coming over, what countries are they coming over from?
So dollars to donuts, 90. I can with complete certainty these people are fleeing Islamic State, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, Eritrea. The vast majority of these people are fleeing Islamic State. That much we know, but that's my point. Ultimately, we don't know, and that's why we interview these people. Like, believe it or not, that's what me and my team do when we go face to face with the traffickers, and we say, "Hang on, where are you going? What do you think you're doing? Who are these guys? He's from Somalia. He's from Eritrea." We've got the footage of all this stuff. We don't know. We're talking about maybe 5 million. It's normally, Justin, it's fighting age males fleeing Islamic State, but the thing is, it's more complicated than that because France is a safe country. You also have Saudi Arabia. You also have Lebanon, give or take. You have other countries, Pakistan. You have other countries that these people could go to. Now, you mentioned, and I'm going to move on to talk about this now. You mentioned, like, how is this happening? Like, what is it rigged? What's going on? Let's be under absolutely no illusion because this pertains to all of the relevant questions around illegal immigration. All of this is coordinated by the British government, the French government, and whoever's working the system or rigging it or paying for it in the Middle East. Absolutely no question about it. Backhanders, corruption, financial incentives, gains. There is no way that these men are traveling 3,000 miles to come to soft touch benefits for all Britain. There is no way that that traffic link has just been set up. Like you said, why isn't the Navy deployed? Where's Interpol with all of this? In Britain, we've got more CCTV per square mile than any country on planet Earth. That's a well-known fact. And you can't get away with anything in Britain. How is it possible that these people are coming to Britain? It's all facilitated. It's state-sponsored terrorism. Now, that can get you into a lot of trouble saying that in Britain, but we've seen it before with the IRA. We're seeing it again here, Justin. All of the illegal immigration crisis in Britain is state-sponsored.
What is their, an average person will say, well, what is their end game? What are they hoping to accomplish through this?
So, okay, fair enough. My opinion, personally, is replacement. That's what I think. I think the end goal is replacement. I think it's replacement of Christianity. I think it's replacement of the indigenous population. I think it's replacement of British people. Now, the problem with that, even though I believe that, the problem then becomes is that someone like your good self, and I would do the same if I was you, would say, but why? So unfortunately, I'm forced to give the correct answer, and my final answer being of the Catholic worldview that this is satanic. You say, why? Why is this happening? I think that it's satanic. There you go. I said it. I think that it's absolutely it's demonic in orientation is what I think. I think that there are agendas out there. We recent examples, Venezuela, for example, Iran currently, where we look at states and we look at the corruption and we look at the problems and we look at how the free world, typically America and the West, responds. I think there's something deeper going on here, Justin. You asked, I said, I think that there is a genuine hatred of British values, of British people, of the thing that made Britain great, which of course was Christendom. I think there is a deliberate attempt to replace us. And if I was to go a step further and say, well, what else is going on? You've got your bog standard corruption. You've got your worker bees being imported. We've seen this for millennia. We've seen this for centuries. You know how it works. The Italians and the Irish went to America. I've already explained that my grandparents fled Italy and Ireland at various different, not my grandparents, but my great grandparents fled at a certain time for better lives. And of course, the leaders in Britain, the liberal elite, have, and this is a point that your audience will be able to relate to, they've seen the abortion rates, they've seen the decline, the population decline, they've seen that we're not making babies, they've seen that we've become godless. So the liberal elite, running a business, running a country, running a business, same thing. They've looked at the profit and loss account and they've gone, right, we need to build, we need infrastructure, we need worker bees, we need people delivering food to these people's homes because there's massive demand for it. And so the liberal elite have taken money, presumably backhanders, the corruption angle, from countries that will say, I know, if we destabilize a region through proxy wars, through guerrilla terrorist activities, through intelligence services, we'll go more into that if you like. If we destabilize this region, all these people are going to flee and they're going to have to go somewhere. The ones that escape, the ones that are genuine refugees, they're going to land themselves in all these different countries in the West, and they're going to enforce, they're going to want power, they're going to want to be involved in politics, they're going to want to push Sharia law, etc. These ideas are not out of the realms of possibility, that there are intelligence agencies and state actors who deliberately destabilize to facilitate and fund the industrial war complex, naturally, to destabilize these regions so that someone has to pick up the bill, right? So I've just merged 2 points there about state corruption and also about just basic good old-fashioned economics, where governments have gone, we're going to need to import all these people because the Brits clearly don't want to replace themselves. They don't want to have babies and have families. But I will again highlight and emphasize the first point I've made, which is that I think the agenda is satanic. I think there is a deliberate attempt to undermine masculinity, Christianity, the patriarch, our sovereign borders, for example. And I'll just close by saying, as someone, Justin, political leader, activist, campaigner, I'm at street level all the time. I will say that the soul of this nation's being crushed. So that maybe that helps my answer. Maybe that helps understand it more. The soul of this nation is being crushed. People are absolutely terrified. They don't know where to turn. I've mentioned two-tier policing and state corruption there, and patriots facing jail if they put a foot out of line. And again, I can break down what that looks like. But people are so tired and they're so scared. They don't understand why our governments are doing this to us. I hope that makes some sense. There's some very important topics there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I want to ask you a little bit more about the native British population, because what we've seen, what I've seen is it seems that the liberal side of the native population is so liberal. There's this alliance that it seems to be over there between the communists and the people from Islam, the Islamists, and they seem to have this alliance in Britain. Would that be a correct statement?
So the phrase "the unholy alliance" is not something that, obviously, I didn't invent that. That's been around a long time before I probably was even born, and it's been fascinating learning about it. Again, going back to my pedigree, education and university degree wise, the unholy alliance is something that we talk about on the right an awful lot, and we see it now in Iran. To give the example, whereby leftist ideology, socialism, Marxism, theocratic dictatorships, lefties, the unholy alliance, communists, and the Islamists. These people, and I want to go on and talk about more what I see at street level, but ideologically, these people are very useful to each other. They don't care about the consequences of their ideology. As long as you're on their team ideologically, they don't care about the consequences, the human rights abuses, injustices, for example. That's why they don't scream free Iran. They scream free Palestine. They don't scream free Iran. They scream free Palestine. They don't scream free Murga Muslims who are held in captivity in China. And the list goes on and on and on. So the unholy alliance is representative. Again, going back to that sort of demonic angle, the unholy alliance is representative of these psychopaths who subscribe to this ideology where it doesn't matter the good, the bad, the right, wrong. It doesn't matter the analysis, the fruits, the consequences. It doesn't matter as long as they're all in on the same ideology, which is the destruction of the West and Christianity. Tell me that's not satanic, Justin. Tell me that's not demonic. So yeah, we have it at street level to give you a bit more meat on the bone here, and again to maybe include Whitechapel a little bit and what we're doing on the 31st of January. Since October the 7th, very confusing to say 2023, but apparently we are approaching again that 3rd year mark. On October the 7th, that changed everything in Britain. And I'll tell you for why, Justin, because the Islamists and the communists all took to street level. Well, the Islamists praising their God and the communists en masse. And we've seen this throughout London, the capital cities, London, Madrid, Paris. We've seen this, New York, for example, over the years. They took to the streets en masse. They weren't sorry. They weren't frightened. They weren't contrite. They said, no, now's the time to double down. Now that barrier on October 7th, what Hamas did, now that they've essentially broken through that barrier, we must continue the work. We must pick up the mantle. That's what they did. We've got the video evidence from October 7th, 2023, until, frankly, 6 months ago last summer was only when it started to die down in Britain. So we see that declaration of war, at least to social conservatives and to Christians, got made, and certainly to Jews, obviously. That declaration of war was made from October the 7th. By October the 9th, you had the Islamists and the communists at street level in Britain saying, global intifada, we're taking it all back, guys. They stood shoulder to shoulder, Justin. I was in the marches, I was doing the interviews, I was putting myself in harm's way. This was even before I became a politician, let alone a party leader. The unholy alliance across planet Earth must be destroyed, and that's why we're standing in Whitechapel on Saturday the 31st of January. That's why we fight. As I said when I was introing, it's the number one threat to Britain in 2026, same as last year and the year before. It's that unholy alliance between communists and Islamists, because here's the thing, these people are in our institutions, Justin. They're in our judiciary, they're in our houses of parliament. They don't just walk among us, they have positions of power. And in many cities, Birmingham, Manchester, Sheffield, Luton, London, there are Leeds, Bradford. There are several, not just one or two isolated incidents, but several cities throughout the UK that have been colonized by Islam and the Islamists that live amongst what we call moderates. Sometimes we call them moderates, sometimes we call them Muslims, but amongst the Islamic Brigade, those Islamists live in those colonized zones. I know, I've seen it, and it's well documented. So the Unholy Alliance is a huge voice. It's a huge lobby group, and the liberal elite listens to it. It certainly doesn't clamp down on it. It certainly doesn't incarcerate it or declare war on it or fight back. It panders to it. It panders to it, and I quake with rage. I really do. But that's why I fight, and that's why I'm putting to the British people that Christian nationalism is the only solution for Britain. It is the only savior for Britain, because the war we're in, Justin, is an unholy war. It is a crusade. The battle we are in is for Britain's soul, and to fight that, you need a holy crusade.
So let me ask you, you brought something up in the beginning I found very interesting, about if you're a conservative, you have to look at yourself and you have to blame yourself first. And as someone, and I encourage our audience to check out Nick's videos on YouTube. Amazing how he's always out on the street. He's active. He's everywhere. And I encourage people to plug his name into YouTube. You will see amazing videos of Nick. And what I want to ask you, Nick, is the native, you call them the patriots, or the native British population, the conservative ones. Do they need to get their act together? Meaning, you're having this march. You're going out into Whitechapel. You're having a march. What kind of response are you getting from the native population? I mean, here in America, a lot of conservatives, I've found, they'll complain a lot, but they don't like to go out and do so much. So what is the situation over there with the conservatives?
So I want to bring in 2 points here. I want to give your audience a bit of background about why Whitechapel is important, why it was important in October, which I want to talk about last October, and why it's important in a couple of weeks' time. And I want to link that to the situation with regards to where conservatives are at in the UK. It's very simple. As party leader and as a politician, a year ago to the day, once I was ratified as leader in January of last year, give or take, I started to make moves, and I decided that we would have a dedicated monthly mass deportations demo with a huge, great big banner which says mass deportations now, and it says UKIP on it. And we would get patriots together, whether we have 10 or 100, it doesn't actually matter. We will go to cities that we've not been to before. We will have a start time and we will see who shows up. We've just finished, by definition, 12 months of arriving in these cities, Justin, and having people come and join us. And obviously there's a huge police presence, a huge far left communist presence, and often an Islamist presence as well. Now, October was set for Whitechapel. And now it was very simple. The Met Police, the Metropolitan Police that control London, the police force in London, should I say, it was very simple. We told them we're going to be marching in Whitechapel, demanding mass deportations and remigration. These are our shop front policies. And the Metropolitan Police said this is going to be hugely problematic. Now, for those of you that know the history about the area of Whitechapel, there were an awful lot of Jewish and Irish settlers there. And there was, at some time in British history, a British fascist party led by a guy called Mosley, and who did appallingly. He never did very well at all. And again, his ideology and that party has nothing to do with UKIP. It's nothing to do with me either. But there are memories from that period of time around about Whitechapel. Whitechapel is also historic. It's historic for lots of different reasons. Culinary, cinematic, um I guess Christian as well. Like it's a nice, well, it was a nice part of London as well. Its position is very interesting as well, where it is in London. And you've got the East End of London, the Cockneys, the Londoners, etc. So look, I'm not gonna paint it in a romantic way, because I have an affiliation, adoration for all of Britain, not just pockets of our major capital city, our capital city rather. But Whitechapel is significant, Justin. And we said we're going to march. And the Metropolitan Police wanted a Zoom call with me, just for your audience so that they understand. They wanted a Zoom call with me, and that was extensive, endless emails. And eventually they said, and I quote, probably about 10 days before the march, a week, look, this isn't happening. And I said to them, I know that you're not going to allow it. I've always known you're not going to allow it, but I'm going to ask for it. My question now is, why not? And they have said, through various paragraphs, and it's a long story, they've said community tensions. How often have we heard that expression in Northern Ireland? How often have we heard that expression across Britain, especially in Britain as well, about community tensions? This is exactly where we've landed, Justin. They said that we can't have an explicitly Christian message with an explicitly Christian party saying that if you're illegal, or if you're a communist or an Islamist, you're getting deported. Who would reject that message? What's the problem with that message? And the Metropolitan Police said there is no way we're letting this march go ahead due to the risk of violence and community tensions. So I said, now we're getting somewhere. Which side's going to be violent? When you say violent, which side? Do you mean the Patriots? Do you mean the Conservatives? Or do you mean the Islamists? Now, I'll fast forward a little bit, because there's another really important point to be made here. I acquiesced and I said, no problem. We'll move it to a part of central London known as Knightsbridge, and we will march up to Marble Arch, which is very, very Islamist / Islamic colonized. It's where they do a lot of preaching, and they play a lot of their music, and they're just a pain in that area of London. It's called Marble Arch. And the Met said, that's absolutely fine, but you're not coming to Whitechapel. So UKIP, we were in the news for every single day for 2 weeks plus, with the commentators and the pundits and the journos talking about the fact that UKIP had been told, you cannot march in Whitechapel due to fears of violence breaking out. And of course, our response as conservatives, therefore law-abiding citizens, we're actually pro-law enforcement. We said, that's your job, you deal with it. So it got left, and we got a huge amount of publicity and notoriety, which kind of brings me on to talk about January 31st this year, in a couple of weeks' time, and your point about where are conservatives at in the UK. I've changed tactic, and I've said, you know what? There are parts of the UK that can't be saved, that are completely colonized. That's right. I'm not exaggerating. Can't be saved and are completely colonized. 100%. Potentially can't be saved. Definitely colonized. So we will have an explicitly Christian message on the 31st of January in Whitechapel. If our message of mass deportations and remigration and anti-extremism is unpalatable to the imams and the Muslims and law enforcement and community leaders in that area, fine, we'll do an explicitly Christian demo where we will march. We call it a walk with Jesus. We will honor the month of January dedicated to the holy name of Jesus Christ. That's what we will do. No different from this is a new campaign we're launching under my leadership with an explicitly Christian party. It's an honor. The Holy Family is the month dedicated to February, or February is dedicated to the Holy Family. We will do exactly the same. So we will find out whether we are allowed to march on the 31st or not. But here's the thing, Justin, if they say no this time, we may still have to turn up. We may still have to be there. That brings in the point about where are conservatives at the moment. And I'm going to be very, very blunt with you. You can't trust the Conservative Party. I said from day one, you can't trust Nigel Farage, and you can't trust his party, Reform UK. They are liberals. They are liberal-minded. They are not socially conservative. They're not Christian nationalists. That's it. The Conservative Party and Reform UK is one and the same thing. The Conservative Party is Reform UK rebranded. So where are conservatives in the UK? Who is registered to vote? And now this comes on to one of the most painful things and frustrating things, Justin. I'll be very, very honest with you. In Britain, the vast majority of people who could hold power and who care so very much about this country aren't even registered to vote. They're not registered to vote. They don't understand that they need to be registered to vote. They don't understand what it means to be a member of a political party. They have absolutely no political ambition whatsoever, and they are 100% indoctrinated, again, not even their own fault, indoctrinated to leave it to the professionals, to leave it to the men in Savile Row suits, to leave it to the millionaires, to leave it to the career politicians, the corrupt liberal elite, the establishment, Justin. That is the real battle we face in Britain. That's the battle that I am facing. I have a team, but it's still on my shoulders at the end of the day, the life I've chosen. You want to know the state of the Conservatives? You mentioned as well a little anecdote. You said people love in America, they love to talk, but don't like to do. Every day I am banging that drum. You have got to, my fellow brothers and sisters, you have got to be registered to vote. And if you don't know what that means, we're going to lose. You've got to become a member of a political organization. I naturally would suggest if you are Christian, you join UKIP. These are concepts that are completely alien to the tens of millions of socially conservative, patriotic, typically Christian nationalist voters that are out there. That's why Reform panders to the centre ground, Justin. That's why Nigel and Reform accept ex-Conservative Party, failed MPs, and ex-senior top brass. That's why, because they know the only people who vote in Britain anywhere near the socially conservative right are Tory voters, are people that have earned a certain amount of money, who have a certain type of job, who have taken an interest in politics. You have millions of people in Britain under my leadership, my activism, and the team's efforts are saying to that demographic, that group, socially conservative, working class, Christian nationalists, patriotic, we're saying to them, there's 10, 20, 30 million of you, but you've got to get up off your backside and you've got to understand the mission. That is to become registered to vote, join up with a political party, stand as a candidate.
Have you seen some inroads? So you're talking about tens of millions of socially conservative people, Christians, and you're talking about a huge number of them. This is very fascinating to hear this, that aren't even registered to vote. In the last year or so, have you made some inroads into this group?
Naturally, the painstaking thing about my hypotheses is that we obviously won't know until now that I am standing, now that I am in charge, now that I am running a party. We won't know until the general election, and it will be a general election. Local elections, they give some information, but it's the general election that holds the truth to the answer to that question and to my hypotheses as well. Are we, in terms of my personal opinion, I'm at street level. I'm known for being at street level all the time, Justin. And there's a huge amount of support. And then you got the social media footprint where I tend to do very well in as well, and people can judge for themselves. Check Facebook, Insta, YouTube, TikTok, X. Look, the social media platforms are always looking to take your content down, and that is a tragedy. But judge the audience should judge for themselves. Go check out my social media footprint at street level. It seems to be working. Yes, social media footprint wise, it seems to be working. Yes, but you and I were chatting before we got started. We've got a massive problem with regards to infighting on the right in Britain. Everyone who's bitter because of how they got treated by Nigel Farage, everyone who's bitter, who's got a chip on their shoulder and who's got money, thinks that they can do it better than the next person. And you just keep getting new political parties. I'll be very honest with you, new political parties just keep forming. And the Electoral Commission in Britain, which controls all of that, they keep letting these socially conservative right wing parties, like over in America, you guys have got the Republicans and you've got problems there, and you got the Democrats and you've got problems there. But everyone kind of knows where they stand between blue and red, give or take. Justin, I'll tell your audience, we've got about 19 parties in Britain on the right. So here's me saying I can't really answer that question without bringing this topic up. Here's me saying, look, we're taking our country back and we're waking up those sort of 15, 10, 20 million people, as you say, like we're waking them up. And you say, are we making traction? Are we making inroads? Like, we really are. Like, I'll let your audience judge, for themselves. But we really are. That's my opinion. But here's the thing: we're waking these millions up. Then when they actually come to the elementary class 101 of politics, which party am I getting into bed with? There's like 18 parties on the right. How are they supposed to choose, Justin? How would you choose? It was the Conservative Party and UKIP. And then UKIP basically ended after Brexit because Nigel burned the boats and ended the party. The party is obviously still going strong, and we are, thanks be to God, doing well, and we're on trajectory to reinsert Christian nationalists and Christian nationalism into the House of Commons. I don't know how many MPs we're going to return. That's down to what happens in 3.5 years' time. But reading the room, yeah, we are making inroads. But I've got to be honest with you, closing up on the point. If you're brand new, if you've heard about Nick Tenconi and what he's doing at street level, and you're buying into this message, Justin, and you're there front and center with the Christian nationalism message, our policies are sound. What do you do if there's 17, 18 other parties, Justin, on the right? What do you do? Where do you start? That is a huge, great big problem we've got in Britain.
So, I have to be honest, I didn't realize there were so many parties on the right. 17 or 18, that is unbelievable, especially for an American to hear something like that. And another thing that involves these things you're talking about is I want to ask you, do you feel Christianity is the key to getting the UK back on track? Is that the key, getting a robust Christianity back? How do you feel about that statement?
Absolutely. 100% thanks be to God. Yes, we have the solution. I don't have it. I didn't invent it. I'm just the guy, I'm just the leader, Justin. I'm the guy saying I've done the math. I've watched, I've done media stuff, I've done activism stuff, I've done events, demos, I've done politicking. I come from the business world. I've made it. I've worked hard. I've seen things. I've got battle scars. I'm the guy who's gone, what's missing is this. That's what's missing, right? And all of this behind me as well, by the way, right? Holy Mother Church. There, I said it. We've got the rise of radical Islam and its influence in our institutions, and of course, the unholy alliance with Marxists, with communists, for example. You've got a liberal elite that absolutely despises the aforementioned tens of millions that I've already gone into great detail about. So you've got a completely divided, fractured Britain. War has been declared. We are taking our country back. We are rejecting liberalism and all of its works, and we are reinstating Christianity, the one true faith, back into the heart of government. So, Justin, if I may, a summary. We have our unifier. We have our unifier in Christ. We have our identity in Christ. We have our strength in Christ. We have our norms, values, ethics, our sanctuary, Holy Mother Church, in Christ. We have it all. Now, wow. Can you imagine in Britain, we go from divided, fractured, liberal, secular, godless, failing. Our culture is on fire and there's very little time to put the flames out. Can you imagine if we actually all, if the socially conservative, Christian or otherwise nationalist, patriotic, if everyone got together and said, wait a minute, what if we achieve something called the Christian bloc vote? You know, like how the Muslims do it, you know, the Muslim bloc vote. I mean, it's absolutely excruciating for me, Justin. I'm sure you can hear the pain and you can see it in my face as well. We have the solution. The solution is the Christian bloc vote. The solution is conservatism. The solution is focusing our political ideology back within the home, back within our workplace, back within talking with friends. The solution is to turn back to God. Our political ideology is conservatism. Our faith is Christianity. We need to turn back to God. We need to achieve the Christian bloc vote. This saves Britain. And we're running out of time. Now, I'm not on my own. I have a fantastic team. But that team you can only trust so many people, right? You and I both know the game I'm involved in. I can only trust so many people. We are doing everything within our power. And that's why I wanted to do the interview with you and for you to reach out to your networks and to share this interview, put this in front of people in Europe, in the Americas, and say, guys, some countries may have it, but Britain doesn't. We need the Christian bloc vote. The Christian bloc vote is the only thing that saves Britain. And a lot of those people, Justin, that vote in I call it the CBV, the Christian bloc vote, a lot of those people won't be baptized and confirmed Christians, like to be Christian, right? Baptized and confirmed. A lot of them will just be baptized. Some of them will be agnostic, but nothing for nothing, they'll be pro-Christianity. So that Christian bloc vote is all of your patriotic, all of your socially conservative, all of your Christian, pro-Christian, all of your nationalist. Justin, it's millions of people. In Britain, it's millions of people.
We've heard that recently, in the last year or so, there is a rise in church attendance in Britain. There's a renewed interest among some of the young people in the more conservative churches, in the Catholic Church, in the conservative churches. Is this true? Have you seen this slowly rising?
So there's a tone and an atmosphere that clearly there is a Christian revival happening in Britain at the moment. I'm in a lot of churches, Justin, an awful lot of the time, traveling an awful lot. And what I will say is that every Catholic church I go to, as a Catholic, I'm in Catholic churches, right? I'm in Catholic services. It's never empty, or it's not halfway empty at all. So I've been as honest as I can there. I don't know about the Anglican churches. If people want to go to those services and be part of that denomination, again, Baptist, Methodist, I've listed Pentecostal. I don't know because I don't go to those services. You'd have to ask them. So I think what's fair to say is that everyone needs to come forward now and actually be honest about what they're witnessing. I can tell you now as a Catholic that the Catholic churches are full. My own personal sort of subjective opinion now. There is a revival happening in Britain and across the West right now.
So, what would you say, Nick, on March 31st, you're having in Whitechapel, you're having this march? What would you like to say to people out there, about this march? How can they help out with it? What can they do to help you with this march on March 31st in Whitechapel?
Perfect. Thank you very much. So first of all, you've said March 31st twice because
Oh,
you've got the word March in your head. So I just want to clarify.
thank you for that. Thank you for that.
It's very easily done. I do it myself as well. There's a March, but it's not in March. It's in January. So this
January
is
30th.
yeah, January 31st. So for your audience, I'm very blessed to know Justin. We've exchanged for many months now, fantastic dialogue, and I really am blessed to know him. And I said, look, let's have a chat. So in terms of promoting January 31st, guys, this is hat in hand territory, because there'll be a lot of people who are viewing this who aren't living in Britain. But if you're not living in Britain and you've enjoyed this conversation and you've bought into what I've said and you trust me just a little bit, there's things you can do. The graphic, the advert for Saturday the 31st of January in Whitechapel is on my social media. You'll find it on my social media. The vast majority of my pages are my name. So it's at Nick Tenconi, or it might be my middle name as well, at Nick Marcel Tenconi. And maybe you can get in touch with Justin if we need help with that. But on UKIP's political pages as well, you're not going to look hard. You're not going to have to look far to find it. Everyone can play their part in reclaiming Christendom. And that's why I wanted to talk to Justin. And I'm so blessed to be doing the interview with him, guys, because that's what this is really all about. My campaign is to reclaim Christendom in Britain. And the vast majority of Americans care about Britain. I truly believe that. Also, not only are we cousins and we hail from the Anglosphere, but the reality is that we do care about our countries very much. We do care. America is hugely Christian. Britain always was, is, and will be. But we've lost our way. I am doing something which has not been done before by a political party, a mainstream political party, or by a political leader, which is to say that on Saturday, the 31st of January in Whitechapel, it's not about politics, it's not about policies. We will be marching, as the liturgical calendar tells us, to honor the holy name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That is what we will be doing. It's not politics. It's run by a political leader. It's run by a mainstream political party, but it's not political. And it's not. It's an explicitly Christian event with an explicitly Christian message by an explicitly Christian political party.
Well, Nick, I have to tell you, we're very impressed with your efforts both on the ground and you've explained in great detail and made things pretty clear. Troubling, but very clear what's going on. And I want to tell the audience, I'm going to include all of Nick's contact information below. So you'll have his website, everything, where we'll have a poster of his march, which is taking place on January 31st in Whitechapel. And we hope, Nick, that after the march and after everything you're having on January 31st, we can have you back and you can tell us how everything went. We'd love to hear from you again.
I would absolutely love that. Can I just say, Justin, it's been so great getting to know you over the last 6 months or so. You've helped me an awful lot. Thank God for people like you and for concepts and again groups and social media movements like Reclaiming Christendom. God bless you. Thank you so much for assisting here. And again, to my American brothers and sisters, to your audience, and to anyone, get that advert, get that graphic out to as many people as you can, because there's a story, as Justin rightly says, there's a story to tell after this. I'd love to come back and speak with you again. And of course, guys, we're a political organization. We don't run on thin air. We need support, and all of this can be found on the party's website, which is ukip.org. If you feel like the only way you can help is to donate, that I can't not think of ways to help somebody like me in my position and our mission to reclaim Christendom. You can donate, you can share the work, but I'm imploring you, please help us with regards to getting the message out about what we're starting on Saturday the 31st in Whitechapel of this month. We're starting something very big and very special, and frankly, all political parties should be doing it, but we're going to need all the assistance and support we can get. So thank you, and God bless you, Justin.
God bless, Nick. We'll talk to you soon and good luck with everything.